Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Arete podcast. I'm joined today by a very special guest. Actually, this is the first time we've ever spoken in person, isn't it?
Yeah, it's mostly through emails.
Yeah.
I did a little digging on Facebook while we were getting everything set up, and I was like, okay, now I know what he looks like, so it won't be like awkward.
Yeah, no, I knew what you looked like from because I watched the interview you did with the Goosebumps group, who are the sponsor of today's episode. So thanks to those guys for all the work they do, and we'll talk a little bit more about them. I'm sure they'll come up organically. Um,
Sure.
But so we're just here to kind of riff about movies, have a good time, nerd out a bit, as I can see from the wall behind you. There's no shortage of fandom. And are those all VHS tapes I'm given to understand?
Yeah, so behind me is all VHS. It's mostly stuff like that's stuck on VHS, and then to my left is all DVD, and then upstairs I have Blu-ray. But for the most part, yeah, it's like collections and like just weird stuff that like you don't really see in stores, or I mean, or you don't really see anywhere really. But yeah, like right now I have this like fascination with stuff recorded off of television. Like as a kid, I would always pause the commercials, and now it's like, man, I really wish that I would have kept recording because that's what I'm after, those little time capsules now. But
It's amazing how much of that is on YouTube now of the old commercial blocks. And in fact, um, I mean, you just have to Google them, but you can search for actual, like, not just commercials, but also TV bumpers from like the old television blocks, whether it's the kids stuff's really popular, like the Fox Kids Saturday morning bumper, stuff like that, but then also like the TGIF prime time lineup video, just millions of views on these super short TV bumpers. And it's just like, this is the stuff we hated when we
yeah.
were actually watching TV, and now everybody was like, I miss those days. I honestly, this might be a hot take. I do miss the old TV model for a multitude of reasons. Not least of which, it's funny, my friend Justin and I were just talking about this when we were recording our Star Trek watch along podcast, and we were sort of lamenting how, don't get me wrong, I love streaming. I love the convenience. I love the just wealth of titles that I can like. There's no way I can watch everything on even one app. Why I have like five, I don't know, but it's just they're really preying on that. I want to be able to watch it when I want to, and it doesn't matter
Mhm.
that I'm paying a monthly fee, right? But I remember how exciting TV used to be.
Yeah, it's kind of lost that luster of like the event, like the Friday night, the family gather around the TV, and or the Sunday night movie. It's a big deal essentially when like tonight I believe Penguin premieres, but like once that goes live, it's like okay, cool. And so you can kind
Yeah,
of
it's
still like
over.
establish like the idea of the weekly show, kind of like with Game of Thrones and stuff. But even that, like you kind of lose, or they kind of lose fans because, like you were kind of alluding to, people just want it then and now and want to binge. So it's a double-edged sword, if you will. And but yeah, my mom particularly, I'll go over to their house and she'll just like play live TV, and then she'll just like kind of go through whatever's live, and yet she's the one that pays for every app, but she's still stuck on the live TV. She likes to go through it and look at like what's showing at 8, and which I guess if you kind of grew up with it, like I mean, I did as well, but my mom is like that's just it's like you gotta catch it in passing, and once you're stuck in that idea, it's really hard to kind of shift from.
No, it is, and I would suspect you're from a similar generation of me, where I constantly say this. If you're like an older millennial, correct? I'm making a correct assumption here.
Yeah, I'm 37.
Oh, okay, we're the exact same age. Got it. Um, so yeah, I constantly say this that we are actually the luckiest generation to have ever lived thus far because we're old enough to remember what the world was like. Like we were old enough to have lived in it and remember and be able to operate in the world before the widespread, well, before the internet, certainly before the widespread proliferation of the internet, before smartphones, way before streaming, like,
Yeah.
you know, the internet was a novelty when we first got a hold of it. And it was like, one of your friend group got the internet and you were like, oh, you have the internet? That's so cool. Um, so we remember what life was like before and after high speed internet, which led to streaming and all that. And to me, that makes it to where we can appreciate all the great stuff that we get from it, but we can operate without it. We're not as dependent on it because let's be real, we're all dependent on these now.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna act like I'm not, but if these ceased to function, it would suck, but we know what to do.
Yeah.
We'd get
Yeah,
over it.
obviously, based on what's behind me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Physical media. I do miss physical media too. I really do. You just can't get over the ease of, buying a movie digitally. Although, who was it? Funimation recently, I say recently, within the last like year or so, got into some hot water because they merged with Crunchyroll and they're if they haven't already, they've discontinued their app. And this isn't so much streaming because they honestly could have integrated the purchases, they just chose not to. But a lot of people were up in arms because if you purchased something through the Funimation app, it will not be available when it integrates into Crunchyroll. And my friend Eric is just like, physical media, they can't
Yep.
take it away from you.
Yep. Yeah, and like that's kind of why I do what I do, just because like VHS specifically, it's like the nostalgic aspect of it. And then also too, it's like I just remember uh I guess this is still nostalgia, but picking up the item, carrying it through the store, taking the time, selecting it, holding it all the way home. It's you actually have a physical item in your hand. It's heavy, has a like weight to it, and all of those things kind of play into the VHS world for me. The only reason that I would ever get rid of one is if there's like a better version or I upgrade often, but if there's like if I have a VHS that there's a release or something that's not available on DVD or Blu-ray, I try to hang on to it. Now, with VHS in particular, it's mostly nostalgia because like my kids, like I have a 9-year-old, like he grew up with VHS. He's probably the only kid in his school that grew up with VHS. But even with him, like he got obsessed with trains, and he had so many train videos that, I mean, they're not going to put all of those on DVD. They're not going to put all of those on streaming. So like a lot of the stuff that he is going to be nostalgic for, 10 years from now, I have no idea how he's going to find it or like even like unless I digitize it for him, of course, but it's it's funny. It's like a rite of passage at our house, and because of which I've been featured in a lot of documentaries for physical media and VHS specifically, but I just love it, and it's for all the reasons you mentioned. Like I I don't buy digital films. Like I get the digital releases with my movies, and I'll redeem them, but I'm not going to go out of my way and spend $15 on something that could disappear once Voodoo or whoever, dissolves or merges with somebody else. Because in that fine print, iTunes included, if it says they want to get rid of it, they can. And we all know how these contracts work. Once they expire, there goes your digital copy. For most things. So
Particularly when you start getting into licensing, which usually, at least thus far, hasn't been as big of an issue for purchases. But when you get into those really niche apps like a Funimation,
yeah,
where that may be the only place you could purchase. Amazon's a little bit different because they sell. So I know the licensing is way different to purchase versus, stream, but that's a very specific area that nobody wants to hear about because it's boring. But honestly,
yeah,
you should know because we get asked a lot through the various podcasts. It's like, oh, why isn't this available in this? It's like, well, it's all got to do with who owns the rights to it. And with long running franchise, Godzilla is a good example because people are like, oh, why are all these Godzilla movies available on Tubi, but not these? It's like, well, who's the rights holder for the United? Way back in the day, especially, it's not like I don't even know who the U.S. distributor for Japanese Godzilla films is right now, but I'm just gonna let's say it's Universal just to pull a name out. Let's say Universal is distributing all the Japanese Godzilla films post 2020. They're not, but just for an example.
Mhm.
Prior to that, it could have been Paramount, or prior to that, it could have been New Line Cinema or Disney. In the case of one film, Shin Godzilla, it was actually distributed by Funimation, and it is only available, not for purchase, it's only available for streaming in the United States on Funimation and Crunchyroll, but on their premium plan. So that would be why. Not such a big deal with newer media because they tend to buy the license as is until it expires, but then it just transfers. But yeah, South Park Streaming Wars is actually quite educational if you understand what they're making fun of. Um,
Yeah.
it really does kind of walk you through that process and how ridiculous it is and how Matt Matt and Trey actually gamed the system
Oh
against
yeah.
two of the biggest ones. It's when you understand it, it's 10 times funnier. It's funny on its own, but God, it's 10 times funnier. Um, so I'll switch gears a little bit, let you talk about yourself a bit. Tell the viewers who probably don't know, my viewers probably don't know, what is CineDump? How did it get started? What's it all about? What's the deal with CineDump?
So CineDump is a website where we interview actors, directors, pretty much anyone of interest. Like if I want to do an entry of someone that I think is interesting, like we've had astronauts, wrestlers, whoever I think might get a click, or I just want to talk to them, and like porn stars that I've met in restrooms, just whoever. That's kind of who I consider talent, and I want to talk to them. The Goosebumps guys as well. That was probably one of my favorite conversations in a long, long time. But we also do reviews. We do retro reviews. Cover a lot of festivals as well. And like right now, I'm handling Fantastic Fest remotely. It's my favorite festival. And as much as I wish that I was there to see Terrifier 3, I am not. And I'm not even a Terrifier fan, but I feel like watching that in a theater with fans, I think that that would probably be the way to watch that film or those films. But yeah, so the website started. I used to go to Alamo Drafthouse a lot, like to the point of I would be there every day, and people just assumed that I worked there. And I was also a heavy drinker at the time. I'm now sober, but I would just watch movies and drink almost as soon as I got off work. And it got to the point where I was sitting at the bar one day and I was talking to this guy who reviewed films, and his name is Jason Howard, and he wrote for a magazine. And I was like, well, how does somebody get into that? Because I went to school for film. I went to school for English as well, so I can write. I know what I'm looking for. And he's like, oh, okay, well, shoot me your email, shoot me your info, and I'll pitch you, and maybe we can get you on the magazine. And this was a magazine based out of California, so it was all remote. They basically just sent you screeners and you reviewed them. And I enjoyed that at the time. And then as time went on, I was like not really loving the stuff that they were sending me. And I was like, I could easily just do this myself. So I kind oh, and then I didn't like the way that they would like give me a film to review and then kind of like bury it. If I
Hmm.
thought if because I'm gonna give you an honest opinion of the film, good, bad, in between. I'm gonna give you the pros, the cons, and I'm gonna give you my voice as well. And they didn't like that. They wanted all the reviews to be positive, and that's just not how I work. I wasn't. I'm
Well,
not. I wasn't.
you'll lose viewers so quickly. If everything you do is positive, it becomes obvious that you're just, you know, maybe not
Yeah.
directly getting paid literally, but like you're being told to say nice things, especially when a movie is just obviously bad.
Yep.
It's very transparent.
Yeah, exactly. And like I try to highlight the good as well. I mean, like we all saw the new Crow. There are things I liked about it as well, but
I'll I'll be honest, there it was better than I thought it was going to be. We talked about it on Toon Talk 2.0 a couple weeks ago, and my co-host there, Virus, was like, "It was shit, it was shit." I was like, "Well,
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't good, but there
yeah,
were aspects that I liked about it that I it was better than I thought it was going to be, but my expectation was like below the basement." So, but yeah,
exactly.
it was not a good movie, especially if you've seen the original. Just
Yeah.
by contrast, it's like, oh my God.
Well, I saw The Crow and then I saw Afraid back to back, and I will say that The Crow was better because AI horror, you can do it and you can do it poorly, and unfortunately Afraid was like lackluster at best. But yeah, so anyway, I got drunk one night and made a website, and there that became CineDump, and I basically taught myself how to code. I dust off the MySpace tools that I knew, and I took all of my contacts, and I reached out to all my PR companies and people I knew, and I like to bring a certain like kind of assholeness to my interviews, and it kind of works out. Like I always, in most of them, trying to pitch myself to be into whoever's next movie or next show. I'm like, let me know if you need a fat guy, and more often than not, I've made friends like that, and I've gotten in films. I've been an actor. I just a couple years or a year or so ago, I shot a film with Dave Sheridan from Scary Movie and Felissa Rose from Sleepaway Camp. It's called Cult of Blood. It's being released very soon. So, you can be professional, but and yourself and honest all at the same time. And because of that, I've kind of opened doors through productions, contacts, and and now at this point, it's mostly CineDump and Jessie are kind of like their own brand, if you will. It kind of goes hand in hand. So yeah, I love it. I'm honestly excited to finish watching because I have an entire inbox full of stuff I need to watch for Fantastic Fest, and basically that's my Christmas. Even though I like Christmas too. So
Yeah, yeah. Christmas is awesome. Yeah, I remember you and I connected because you had sent me an email um in regards to the convention that the Goosebumps crew and we too we're partnering with them, but it's their baby, so I don't like to say our event because it's like we're involved, but it's really their baby. They're the guys that brought virtually everyone to the table.
yeah,
But you'd reached out and inquired about some information, and I was like, okay, yeah, check out. I check everybody out when they email me, especially if they, inquire about that. You'd be amazed how many people hit us up and we're just like trying to get, for example, there was one guy who hit us up and was like, yeah, I've got 20 guests that we can get there. We're like, cool, yeah, here's the letter of intent, blah blah blah, let us know if you have any questions. Weeks go by, it's like, hey, just checking in, like, not trying to bother you, but you sounded very gung-ho about this, so just checking in. And then it got really weird because
yeah,
I'm not gonna name names. I could tell you off air, but um he contacted me, Nick, and Isaiah separately, trying to get Catherine Long's contact information.
fair enough.
And I was so proud of those guys because I didn't know. We found out by chance because Nick asked, he's like, "Hey, have you heard from so and so?" I was like, "As a matter of fact, I have." It got really weird. He was like, "Yeah, I know." We all gave essentially the same answer, which is like, "No, we're not going to give you her information. We don't represent her. She's made it clear to the guys that she's not really looking for that, and it's so inappropriate for us to do that. So we're not even going to consider it. If that makes this not happen, then that's fine." And they all, were like, "Oh yeah, he reached out to me too." And I told them that. I was like, "I'm so proud of you guys." Because like
Yeah,
independently,
yeah.
this was not a group decision. Everybody was like, "No."
Yeah. With the whole convention aspect of it, we had our discussion, and then I told them, in Texas down here, I have contacts, and also help with conventions. I help with Houston Horror, I help with Cult Classic, I help with Texas Frightmare, I help pick films. So like, yeah, the circuit, I guess you could say it's very like we all know each other. Some of us don't like each other. but I can give advice or like, point people in the right direction. It's really what you do with that. And I mean, especially with Catherine Long, you should know there's, it's like you'd be surprised like when people see my interviews, I like kind of like you're saying, people will come out of the woodwork like from people I went to high school with and
Hmm.
college. I'm like, hey, can I get their number? And I'm like, dude, I mean, there are people that I have their number, there are people that I have their email, but like I'm not giving it to you. Like that's just
Yeah,
like I haven't talked to you in 20 years, bro. Like come on now. So it's a weird world, but and I count my blessings, but sometimes it's like, dude, just enjoy the content. Like that is
absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of the convention, though, we are, as anybody who's been following it knows, the Kickstarter did not reach its goal, but we are not defeated. We are actually currently, we're pitching to, well, not a few. We're pitching to a great number of investors, and we're confident. We're confident that we'll get somebody to help fund the venture, and we've actually escalated it into a full convention company called Dream Boy. But One Weekend at Horrorland is going to be our flagship event, so look out for that on the horizon. We're gonna make it happen. It may not be this year, but we're gonna make it happen.
awesome, man. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And like those guys kind of reignited a love for Goosebumps and like I like young adult horror in me. I
Hmm.
mean, even before that meeting, I was kind of going through the motions of like reading those books to my son. It was just kind of he's 9, and we're every couple weeks we pick up a new one. But just talking to them, it kind of they have this like childlike love about them, and it was just a great conversation. I watch their podcast now. Um, and so at the end of the day, regardless of the convention, even existing or not, I'm happy that I crossed paths with you as well as them because otherwise, I mean, I love my VHS, but Goosebumps, man, it took me right back. It was really fun.
It's funny how because and they know this. I've said this many times to them. It's like I obviously I grew up and I watched it and I read them, but I was never not even close to being a super fan like Godwin, Nick, or those guys. But man, you watch their podcast, and I can say this as somebody who's not a Goosebumps super fan. It's still entertaining as hell. I still have a
Yeah.
great time when I listen to their episodes. And just you can feel the genuine love of the franchise that they have. That's something you can't fake when they go that deep into it. And then all you have to do is look at Bjorn's special room, and it becomes quite obvious that you don't fake that. That's a very expensive thing to fake. His giant collection. But yeah, those guys are great. Podcast is incredible, and we're very, very proud to be friends and associates with them because they're
Yeah,
an awesome bunch of
definitely.
guys. Awesome bunch of guys. Which, since they are the sponsor, we can let you know if you're even like I said, even if you're remotely a fan of Goosebumps or '90s horror, young adult horror in general, check out their podcast. Their new episodes go up every Wednesday, and it's always a blast. Their first episode, which I've not even seen the Disney Plus series, and I was still entertained when they tore it to shreds.
Yeah.
It's like this is hilarious. So check them out. It's a fantastic podcast, and hopefully you subscribe, like, and follow those guys because they're awesome and they deserve everything.
Yeah, and they have really good guests too. Like they're deep dives, but at the same time, kind of like you're saying, even if you haven't seen the episode that they're in, or if you haven't read the comic that person wrote, like it's interesting and it makes you want to go buy it or find it. And that's that. I mean, like knowing is half the battle, especially in this case, because you really want to go seek out those books or that or those comics or those shows. And I don't like. I am a horror guy. Like I love horror. So like I really didn't feel like that out of the loop when talking with those guys. And a lot of those actors that started on those shows kind of went on to do horror films or there's a lot of crossover with Are You Afraid of the Dark as well because they were pulling from the same Canadian cast or like the same group of kids. So it's kind of fun to see, like like where they all went because I love that shit. So,
Yeah.
but
It's also quite funny because they put the bug back in me to a certain extent because I started rewatching the 90s series on Netflix, and it's amazing what goes over your head when you're a child because when it was airing originally and like I was buying the VHS tapes or watching it on TV, I didn't hear a single Canadian accent. It didn't seem weird to me. And then you watch the Haunted Mask one and you're just like, wow,
yeah,
it's
yeah, for real.
super north.
Which is funny. You know what's ironic about that is that I'm actually Canadian.
Are
So
you really?
like yeah, yeah, and we actually have family down right now from Canada at my house. So it's like it's just really odd because like I'm first generation Texan is what I say. But Texas and Canada, they have a lot of similarities. Like it's especially Calgary is like very, very similar. Like it looks the same. There's like it's all about oil. Everyone wants like a four wheeler or like a or a mower. So it's like it's the exact same thing, and they everyone wears cowboy hats in both places. So I don't really feel
You
that
don't
out
feel
of
that out of place. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Pro
It
wrestling's big in both,
yes. Yeah, yeah.
especially
My
historically.
when Owen Hart passed, my grandpa was actually up there for work, and he saw like all the wrestlers like at the airport, and he was like telling me, and I was like, "That's crazy." So I don't know, it's small world, literally.
It's quite funny. Yeah. So are you from Calgary?
No, I was born here, but
Ah, okay.
my mom is, and we go back often, go fishing and stuff. And mo all of my family's either in Texas, Alaska, or Canada. And my grandpa's the one that made that shift. He was just coming down here for work and then never went back. So it is what it is.
Did he work in the oil industry? Is that why he came
Yeah,
down there? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And my dad does too. So, and it's funny because everyone always thought I would either do oil or become a lawyer because I talk so much shit. But, I do stuff like this. So, it is what it is.
Well, you know what's funny too, and the phrase everyone's a critic, right? But at the same time, criticism is very important because I'm gonna butcher this, but and I don't even remember who said it, but somebody somewhere said something to the effect of if you let people make bad shit, they're just gonna keep making bad shit. You
Yeah.
know? And it's true. So segue because I named the title What Makes a Good Movie with CineDump. So to kind of sort of tie it in, these conversations are always go everywhere, but I have to ask, being the critic that you are, and I've read some of your reviews, and I gotta say, very impressive. Because they're not just, I know your site is very comedically aimed, but they actually are like, the goal is not to shit on them necessarily, it's to give pertinent information. And what I really liked about the reviews I read anyway, is that it basically helps the reader decide whether or not they want to give it a shot with the information that you present. So I appreciated that. But to your mind, why are so many movies that are coming out today just awful? Just so bad and terrible. Do you think we're just old and set in our ways, or do you think there's actually things you can point to that demonstrate that the quality of filmmaking is actually on a decline
Oh, I
overall?
know exactly why. Oddly enough, because it's because they're trying to cater to a broad audience, and like we can say, we want something original or niche all we want, but no one's going to go see those movies in the theater. There are special cases where people do go see those movies, but I mean, everyone's going and seeing Marvel films. And as I like those movies too, they have a place. But I mean, even Deadpool, the most recent Deadpool, I enjoyed it. But I mean, I don't think it's a five-star film. They cater to these dumb audiences, and I mean that's kind of ultimately why we are getting, these lackluster films. Not only that, though, we we have so many options. We have so many people making films. You can make a film with an iPhone and you put it on Amazon tomorrow. That's just the world we live in. But yeah, so I think it's a little bit of the fact that they are making these films for broader audiences, and then also too because of streaming, uh, like I've talked this to point to like to death, but with streaming, they promote what they want us to see. So like your top, the top 10 of Netflix, those are the films that they want you to see. Those are the films they have money in, and you're gonna watch them because they're accessible. And like my mom, we're going back to her because she's the voice of reason here, especially as far as streaming. But she'll be like, "Why the hell are all of these movies from 1992, being suggested to me?" It's because they just bought them and they want you to watch them. And there's more to that. But I mean, Netflix specifically, they'll change the thumbnail or the poster to cater to you. So like I'm a white straight man, so like I will get like villains or attractive women in my posters. My wife is going to have a completely different experience on Netflix. My son is going to have a completely different experience, and it's the illusion of choice, and that choice is garbage. So if you want to find something good, you can dig deep or go to a festival and discover it yourself. But for the most part, these films that we're seeing, every trailer or like all over your Facebook or like, every ad before pre-roll ad, those movies, oddly enough, are probably going to be garbage. Just, I hate to break it to you, like there's still a good time. Like I still had it, like I said, I still had a good time with The Crow. I enjoyed Beetlejuice actually quite a bit. But they're not, they're not great films. They're just popcorn movies that you can take the family to.
And I think sort of to defend the popcorn movies, because sometimes that's just what you want. You just want a popcorn movie. I don't have a problem with them, even as somebody that critiques from time to time. I don't have a problem with them as long as they're honest about what they are. Like Deadpool and Wolverine was never claiming to be, to cite the example you used. Deadpool and Wolverine was never claiming to be a cinematic masterpiece. Everybody knew what it was. Everybody knew what they were signing up for, and it delivered 100%. But then you get, and of course I'm gonna space trying to think of one, but then you get movies that sort of, well, I guess you can make this case against some Marvel movies because some are excellent and then some are just eh. But you sometimes get movies that are basically advertising themselves as these, fantastic pieces of cinema, and it's just a popcorn movie,
Yep.
which if it had marketed itself as a popcorn movie, it probably would have been fine. But because the expectations were marred, shall we say, to put it gently, um, a lot of people see them, and like I just got turned off of so many of the recent Marvel releases, really post Endgame. Some have been good, don't get me wrong, some have been good, but most of them I leave the theater, I'm just kind of like, eh, I don't know that I
Yeah.
really want to commit 2+ hours of my life to that. I'm okay. And I certainly don't want to have to watch. This is my friend Justin's favorite thing to say. It's like, I don't want to have to do 10 hours of homework to understand what's going on in the movie.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's kind of where they got you though. They have you by the balls because at this point you've invested so much time and money and effort. So like you want to see what happens next. And usually you want to see what happens next first. So more often than not, I am that guy that's usually at the theater, night one with my whole family because number one, this kind of goes back to the original point. It's safe. I can take the whole family and at least I know I'll be getting at least a mid-tier film.
that's true.
Like it is what it is. Like I don't know. The last time I can honestly remember having a good like solid experience with a Marvel film was probably Captain America 2. I think
Really.
yeah, it's like a damn near perfect film.
I mean,
And
it is, but really, you didn't enjoy Endgame or not Endgame, I'm sorry, Infinity War to the same degree?
not really, no.
Really? Okay.
Sometimes like it's like less is more. And oddly enough, I did like I the experience of what was it? Doctor Strange too. Like I enjoyed that because it was such a spectacle. And then I also really enjoyed the Spider-Man when they were like all of the Spider-Mans because that blew my kid's mind. I was watching him more than I was watching the screen.
See, I didn't love. Okay, I was sufficiently entertained with Multiverse of Madness, but I absolutely love No Way Home. Now, of course, a few years removed, I can now admit that the film has some issues, but overall,
Yeah,
my defense of it is it's like this movie was never meant to, again, it was never meant to be an Oscar worthy film. It was meant to get all three Spider-Men in the same
yeah,
movie and sell a fuck ton of movie tickets, which it did.
yeah.
So
Well,
it
another
achieved its mission.
and kind of going off Spider-Man, I also really dug the animated ones. Like those blew me away. Like blew me away. Expectations exceeded. And that's coming from someone that after watching the first one, I was like, they can't top that. And then
Oh,
we
oh,
we would like, holy shit, part two, my
yeah,
God.
and then they said, "Hold my beer." Funny about that, because he's talking about the Spider-Verse films. If you haven't put it together yet, I actually, when I watched the first one, I really didn't enjoy. I didn't hate it, but I was kind of like, it was okay. The art style was a bit janky for me at first. Now I love it because now I
Yeah,
understand what they were going for with it. And then it was funny. It was actually my friend who was like, "Man, I don't understand how you don't like Into the Spider-Verse," and I'm like, He's like, You know what? I think you need to watch it again."
yeah,
And I'm like, okay, fair enough, because that wouldn't be the first time I watched a movie, didn't like it, and then watched it again, and then finally got it. And then it was like, oh, opinion 180. And then the second time I watched it, I realized what they were doing with the Miles character, because it's really easy, especially if you haven't seen the movie and you've only heard about it. It's real easy to see like, oh yeah, they're just replacing Peter Parker, with a minority, but never mind the fact that Miles Morales has been in the comic books for quite some time before that movie came out. So he's not a new character that Hollywood invented to
yeah,
replace a straight white man. It's not the case this time. But I watching it again, his relationship with Peter B. Parker, and then I understand what they're doing, and that the whole movie is about Miles not trying to be like the other Spider-Man or
yep,
spider people, Spider-Men, and then it hits you and it's like, "Oh, okay, get it. I'm there." Because that's what the whole first movie is about. Everybody trying to tell Miles how to be Spider-Man, and he's terrible at it until he just decides
yeah,
I'm going to be my own Spider-Man, and then he grows into it. And so by the time the second movie rolls around, I'm just like you. I'm like, "Oh, I'm stoked for this." And then expectations way far and above exceeded. Just wow, so much so the movie ended and I was pissed. I was
yep.
like,
Same here.
"I want more. I want more."
Yeah, they literally ended it on Rising Action. And like I literally have chills like or goosebumps, if you will. Just like talking about it because it was so good. And do you have kids?
I do not.
Okay, like just experiencing this movie in particular with a child is
I
like
can imagine.
mind blowing
Yeah, I
because
can imagine.
another thing that was really cool was the art style would change every time they like would introduce a new character.
Hmm.
And for your kid or like a kid to like realize that, it's so fucking cool. And I also wanted to point out like another thing, like a lot of people hated on the new Batman with R-Pats, and I'm an R-Pat's like stan, and just because I love most things that he does, and in particular, like the fact that like he was like struggling as Batman in the beginning, I like that kind of like how Miles was, because we never really have seen that in a Batman film.
This
Um,
is true. This is true. So I'm gonna preface this with everybody should get this is mostly on the original podcast we do, The Average Intelligence. It was the first one. Um, it sort of became a running joke because spoiler alert, I am not a Robert Pattinson fan, but I play up my hatred for him just for laughs. It entertains me. And plus the hate comments I get are phenomenal. I love them. But by this point, it's obviously a joke. He's just not an actor that I particularly like. I had a major point, which apparently he was joking. I don't believe he was joking, but there was a big hubbub during the pandemic where he was like it was reported that he was refusing to work out to stay in shape for Batman, and I was just kind of like, I don't, I that seems really kind of silly to me because you've been given, assuming this is true. I've never met the guy, and I love how people will tell me sometimes they'll be like, "Yeah, you would never say that to his face." I'm like, actually, I would. Um,
Yeah.
but if I met him, I'm sure that at the very least it would be a cordial interaction. He'd probably tell me to fuck off. What am I saying? But he's Robert Pattinson. I'm me. Like I have no. Robert Pattinson doesn't give two shits about my opinion of him. But the joke that I kept making because we did a review of the Batman and I just took it as an opportunity to get more Robert Pattinson hate comments. Well, hate comments for me there. But the joke I was making in the theater with my friend Eric was I was like, you could just replace lines from Twilight and this movie and it would all make sense.
I
You
could see
literally
that.
could. You literally could. Because
Someone
literally
should
both
do that.
I agree. I think somebody should because the biggest joke I made was like both movies essentially have a moment where somebody asks who or what are you? And I'm like vampire or Batman. They both work.
Yeah.
They both work.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like with like with with all of with everything that came between the Nolanverse, it was a welcome addition to the Batman world. I'm not sure how big of a Batman fan you are. Like I like Gotham as well.
See, I didn't.
Um,
I did. I think we're opposites here. So, question: how do you feel about Batfleck?
I mean, he's okay. I'm not like a fan.
See, this is fun because I think we're total opposites on the
Yeah.
Batman spectrum. Because Ben Affleck's my favorite on screen, my favorite live action Batman. Because
Okay.
to me he was the only one that I feel played a really good Batman and a really good Bruce Wayne. Because don't get me wrong, the best Batman is probably the Nolan verse, but I just didn't like his Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, I didn't either. I
I
didn't.
didn't care for it.
What's your
Um,
favorite Batman?
Kevin Conroy, Batman
No,
the
no, I mean
animated series.
I mean Batman like movie. What's your favorite?
Ooh, that's a good question. As in terms of like a pure movie, I'd probably have to say The Dark Knight, but to me, if that had been Batfleck, I think it would have been just a bit better. And that's not to take away anything from that movie, because I mean it's close to flawless. There's not a
Yeah.
lot you could have really changed to have made it better, but I really dug the Batman aspect in Justice League and Batman v Superman. Kind of that older, more grizzled, Dark Knight Returns esque,
Yeah.
Batman. I dig it. Now, I understand when some people say it was a little too dark because, again, my favorite Batman incarnation is Batman the Animated Series, the Batman that doesn't kill, the Batman that doesn't use guns, the Kevin Conroy, like not necessarily tormented, but still like he's okay going above and beyond, but there's still a line that he won't cross, morally speaking.
Yeah.
That's my favorite Batman. Whereas Batfleck is cool, like shooting people, fuck it, I'm down. Whatever.
Yeah.
Random people, yeah, no problem here. So
Fair enough. I don't know. I have a special place in my heart for all of them, but I
fair.
always for some reason Batman Returns, I think like it's always going to stand out to me as like because it's so over the top and like you got the Burton, you have like there's there's so many villains
Hmm.
but they're utilized well. It's because that could
Well,
be done so poorly.
and that was kind of starting the trend that was the case for a while, where well, I think, well, basically Batman Returns through Batman and Robin, at least where there were basically two villains per film.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you had Catwoman and Penguin, and then in Batman Forever, you had Two-Face and the Riddler. Batman and Robin, you had Bane and I'm sorry, Bane was a side character. You had Poison Ivy and Mr. Freeze.
Yep. Well, in Batman Returns, you have Christopher Walken, who also a villain, and then you they were setting up for what's his name to play Two-Face because Lando
Oh yeah, because
Calrissian.
you had Harvey Dent was in that movie. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's like all these like little Easter eggs, and I mean, Pee Wee Herman is is Penguin's dad. He drops him into the to the river in the beginning.
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know, something I think it might be a little nostalgic too because it's so as a kid seeing clowns with guns, like it's like holy shit. So
Yeah.
maybe that plays into it a little bit for
Well,
me.
and I can understand while Michael Keaton isn't my favorite Batman, I can understand why he is for some people. I can
Yeah,
That's something I can wrap my head around and understand. And same thing for really every version. Um, yeah, really, because I understand because my friend Eric, he and I disagree completely on the Batman. He loved it. I was kind of like, eh, wasn't really
yeah,
my cup of tea. But that's the beautiful thing about the diversity of film out there, because there's something for everybody. If you don't like this, that doesn't mean it, well, it doesn't inherently mean it sucks. It might suck, but somebody likes it.
yeah.
Somebody
But
somewhere's gonna love it.
speaking of Batfleck, I had a my buddy Martin. He actually went to like a signing with Ben, and he got one of his Batman comics signed. And
Oh,
he was
that's
like,
awesome.
because he's like the biggest Batman guy that I know.
Yeah.
Like for one of his birthdays, we he rented out a theater and showed the Batman OG Batman. Anyway, he's in line. He's about to get this comic signed. He's like so hyped because I think at this point he had gotten every Batman signature on a comic, and he's like next in line, and the guy in front of him goes, "How's Jennifer doing?" And it was like right when they had announced like that they were separating, and he's like, "Oh, she's good." And Martin was like, "Dude, what are you thinking, bro? Like." Number one, it's a weird question to ask considering the situation. And then number two, like be a little more prepared. Like,
Yeah, that just gives me vibes of Chasing Amy when the guy says he's a tracer. It's like same energy.
yep.
Except
You,
that's
you,
Jason Lee, but
it's yeah, it's literally one of the scenes where what I thought of whenever he told me that story, because that's my favorite Kevin Smith film, oddly enough.
same here. See, it's okay. We agree. We're back on the same team. Yeah, I think Chasing Amy or Dogma for me, but Chasing Amy I think is just the better movie in terms of story and all that. Dogma, while very entertaining, just gets a little, not in a bad way, but it's just a grander sort of
Yeah,
thing and
yeah.
has some religious connotations, but you do get to see Selma Hayek, and I'm always a fan of that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, I'd say Chasing Amy. What would you say though? Because now we're gonna get you in trouble because somebody somewhere is gonna have something bad to say about this. And let me know if you need to leave because I know you got a concert to get to.
No, all good.
Cool,
Got a little time.
cool. What would you say, gun to your head, is your favorite movie of all time?
Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind.
Excellent
Or
choice.
of the Spotless Mind, sorry.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's not my number one, but it's up there. It's top five at the very least. You might be able to appreciate this. I watched that movie when I was in college. I was in a film class, and I took said film class because the class is you watch a movie and then discuss. I'm like, sweet, easiest A ever. What I didn't count on was the film list being chock full of movies that I just hated. This was the sixth movie on my list, and I literally, because I'd never heard of it before, and I saw Jim Carrey in a serious movie, and I went, because at the time I didn't really appreciate Jim Carrey's acting ability. I just liked his comedy. And I said, but Kate Winslet's in it. It can't be that bad. I start watching it, but I'm only half-ass watching it because it is kind of a slow start. It's a
It
mo
definitely does have a slow start.
Yeah, it's a movie that if you're not paying attention, you won't get into it. You have to actively watch this movie. So about halfway, it's about at the halfway point when spoiler alert, when Joel's memories are starting to fade when they're doing the procedure, I click what's going on and I went, "Oh shit, this is brilliant." So I actually started it over because I
Good
was
man.
like, "Okay, I need to understand what's going on here." And it's one of those movies where every time I watch it, I notice something more. It's
Yeah.
such a great movie. That's a very good. Okay, never mind. Nobody's gonna give you grief for that because that's a solid choice.
Well, I one of my good friends, colleague now, he always gives me shit when I say that I love that movie because he's like, that's a pussy movie,
Yeah, it
which
is not.
it's fair because I get where he's coming from because he wants me to say like Jason or Friday the 13th or something, which I you know I'm a Freddy guy, but Eternal Sunshine, it's the script is perfect. Michel Gondry is like one of the best directors of all time. He some of the tricks that he does like with the camera itself or like
Hmm.
with the lens it's incredible. It's like film school on a movie. And acting is impeccable. I actually saw it in theaters and I try to see it in theaters every time it's showing. But
Oh,
yeah,
I need to. Yeah, because I've never.
there's nothing like it. You just become immersed.
Yeah,
Um,
because I've never seen it in a theater, so I need to watch out for that. Because yeah, that would be an experience. Yeah, that sounds amazing. I need to watch out for that.
But I mean, for those people that maybe haven't seen it or like are curious about it, I will say that like I think the reason that I love it so much is because it like it pushes the point of like every relationship that you have is meaningful, or like if you go through like a breakup or a divorce or just a shitty situation, you can still learn from it. And it's interesting to kind of see like how they show that on screen because I've also read the script and it's like there's moments when you're like how did they translate this, and then you see it when you're watching the film and it's impressive. And yeah, Jim Carrey, it's wild. I love the Truman Show too, but like
That's
this
another
is
good
just
one.
next level.
It really is. And then what always gets me, well, there's two or three scenes that always really get me. The two biggest ones are the very end when they realize what's happening, and then Jim Carrey's just little
Yeah.
okay. But then the other one is when it's his last memory and he's trying to hold on to it and it's the house crumbling and
Yes.
everything and I love how they do it because it's practical. The,
Yep.
the light literally just fades
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah,
it's such a beautiful scene.
that scene and then the scene where like there's like the barrier between him and her and she's like walking away, but it's like filmed through like a glass
Hmm.
that has like that texture on it. But from like the viewer's perspective, it looks like she's like fading away, but it's literally just one of those. I don't know. It's beautiful. It's really fun. I also
The
really
whole
love
yeah.
Garden State, and like it's again, it's one of those relationship movies, but it kind of slowly fell out of my top five. Like I still love it,
Yeah,
but
but
it's
Garden State is very much a product of its time, and some of it doesn't, and I don't mean to say it's bad, but some of it just didn't age like Eternal Sunshine did, because there were a lot of things in Garden State that when it was made, it was pioneering some of these storytelling ideas, but they would become very cliche. So if you didn't see Garden State when or shortly after it came out, you're looking at it now and it's like, oh my God, this is a commercial, you know factory film when in fact it was, very much an indie darling when it came out because it was
yeah,
so different.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that's fun. Another movie I really need to see, and my favorite movie of all time is Casablanca, and I had the ticket and then I ended up not being able to go watch it in the theater, so still haven't seen that yet, but it's on my radar. But I'll have to add Eternal Sunshine to the list because that sounds incredible. I can't believe I didn't think of that.
Yeah, it's fun. Like another a really good one in theaters. I saw Akira. That was
Ooh.
fantastic. I saw Akira back to back with something. What's it's the one, it's like the Criterion VHS tape.
Another anime film, or did they?
No, it's it was just another what the it was another like just movie that they happened to be showing that day, and I was like, this is mind-blowing to watch these two films back to back. Let's see. Old Boy's also really good on in theaters.
Oh, okay.
Video Videodrome and Akira back to back. Holy shit. Yeah, it's
That's
like
a that's a great day. No,
yeah.
and it's funny because I remember in the height of the pandemic, everybody was like, "Oh my God, the movie theaters are gonna die." And what we're talking about right now just reinforces what I said at the time. It's like, listen, movie theaters are never going to die because there are just some movies that need to be seen on a big silver screen, and it's just it's something that can't be replicated. So thankfully they're recovering, but
Yeah,
but
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think popcorn buckets are a big proponent for that. Like, I guess because I've noticed that like every you can't go to the movies without buying a popcorn bucket these days.
Well, that's how they make their money, on the concessions largely. So that's why I annoy the shit out of people that I go to the movies with, but I will literally ever anybody that goes with me, I'm like, you're not sneaking in food or candy. If you want something, I'll buy it from the concessions for you because I know that's how the theaters make their money. And I want them to stay in business. I want them to turn a profit because I want to keep seeing movies. I know you got to head out here shortly, so I will give the floor to you. Is there anything you would like the viewers to know about that's coming up for you? And where can they find you on the internet?
So like I mentioned, I'm covering Fantastic Fest right now, so I'm gonna have a ton of reviews up on CineDump.com. That's CINE dump.com. Let's see. I mean, you can also find me on my YouTube. It's Jessie Hobson, Jessie like a lady, Jessie Hobson, or you can look up CineDump.com. But as I've had a ton of interviews recently, I interviewed Charlie Saxton, who was from the show Hung. I interviewed some guys from oddly enough, I really like the show Riverdale, and I grew up watching
Really?
OC,
Okay.
so I always really enjoyed talking to actors that were on Riverdale. Um, yeah, I just try to keep it different, man. I have actors all the time, and Marty Van Peebles, that was a fun one. Let's see. Uh,
They should also check out your interview with the Goosebumps crew, which you can't find on cinedump.com. That's a really good entertaining one.
Yeah, yeah, I really enjoyed that one just because, like I was saying, like it really kind of reignited that love for me. And I would love to go on that podcast with those guys or have them on my YouTube again. But yeah, just I guess check me out, Jesse Hobson, cinedump.com, interviews, all that shit. Instagram, Real Joe Danger, Twitter, Joe_Danger. Uh, yeah, just happy to be here, happy to talk movies, and I'm happy to do this anytime, man. Thanks for having me.
Some yeah, well, I'm might hit you up on that. We got a lot of podcasts and a lot of them talk about movies, so you're always welcome to come on if you have something you want to plug as well. Everybody, check out cinedump.com and Cinedump on YouTube, and we will see you guys next time.